Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Lydia. Pretty much last night was quite interesting. How surprising were the results?
Sadly, I wasn't very surprised. I actually won some money on some office pools. The polls were all over the place, so it was kind of hard to handicap this race. But the momentum clearly was, leading into last night was certainly in favor of the Liberals. And just given the dynamics of where their support was, I actually thought that they would get a majority government.
Well, here in Windsor, Essex, we have 3 NDP MPs with the party in third. I'm just kind of curious, how is this going to affect Windsor, Essex?
It's not going to be good for Windsor Essex. Ultimately, we are not on at the table either provincially or federally. We don't have any representation in government. We are in opposition, and it's not official opposition even. It's third-party status. So the way parliamentary democracy works is you have to be official opposition to get the first question of the day and to get the most questions of the day. So really, for both the provincial and the federal Liberals, their attacks are going to be coming from the right. They're really not going to be hearing a lot of Labour voices, NDP voices. They'll try, but they just don't tend to get the same amount of media coverage, and as a result, it's difficult to be part of the decision making and part of the goodies that might be streaming to different ridings.
Well, I know that Windsor's mayor is saying last night's result is going to create kind of a political wilderness in our area. The nearest Liberal is, I believe, London West. So what do you think he meant by that?
Well, there's an old adage in Windsor that we feel that the political elite thinks that the country ends in London or the province ends in London. And I think we've made that come true this election. It's going to be very difficult to get our voices heard. And part of the, I don't think it's going to harm us in terms of macroeconomic policy, trade policy, manufacturing. I mean, clearly those are things that the government needs to promote and to encourage. Where it's going to matter are a lot of those policy platforms that the Liberals had, more infrastructure spending, more spending on transit. Those aren't going to necessarily filter down to Windsor. It's going to be more difficult for us to get our voices heard. And I suspect that a lot of that money is going to go to, say, Toronto, where they overwhelmingly voted in favor of the Liberals.
And how surprising was it that Stephen Harper decided to step down as leader?
Again, that's not surprising. He has said earlier that he was only interested in being prime minister, and if he wasn't going to get a mandate, that he was going to resign. He's kept his seat, and that I think is a good thing for him to do. He just didn't thumb his nose at the people of Calgary heritage. He is still going to be the representative. Don't expect to see him in the House of Commons. I would imagine it'd be much like when Paul Martin resigned. He resigned his position as leader, but kept his seat. But we didn't really see him in the House of Commons, and that's fair. I mean, you have to realize, going from being prime minister to losing, even though it wasn't a spectacular loss, it was still a loss. You don't have to play the game anymore. And so I don't expect you'll ever see another media interview from him. He will go quietly into the night.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Lydia. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.